6 months after I buried my fiancé, I saw him laughing in the lighting section of a hardware store with my sister's hand in his. I know how that sounds. Grief does strange things to a person. It makes you see faces in crowds that aren't there, hear voices in empty rooms, reach for someone in bed who will never be beside you again. For 6 months, I'd been living in that fog, convincing myself that every tall man with dark hair might be Daniel, that every laugh that sounded like his was just my broken mind playing tricks. But this wasn't a trick. This was real. I stood in aisle 7 of the Lowe's on South Virginia Street in Reno, Nevada, and I watched my dead fiancé pick out light fixtures with my older sister like they'd done it 1,000 times before. His laugh, that specific laugh I'd fallen asleep to for 2 years, the way he tilted his head when he was listening. And the scar on his right wrist, running from his thumb to his forearm, pale and raised against his skin. I knew that scar better than I knew my own face. I'd held that hand in the emergency room in 2019 when they stitched him up after the motorcycle accident. 11 stitches. I counted every one. Grief doesn't recreate scars. What I discovered that afternoon destroyed everything I believed about family, about love, about trust. But it also set me free. And by the time I was done, I took everything back. Let me tell you how it happened. It was a Saturday in late October, just past 2 in the afternoon. I'd been at Lowe's for almost an hour, wandering the aisles without much purpose. That had become my weekend routine since Daniel died, finding projects around the apartment that didn't need doing, buying supplies I didn't need, anything to fill the hours that used to belong to us. I was in the electrical section, staring at a wall of outlet covers without really seeing them, when I heard his voice. Not just any voice. Daniel's voice. That particular tone of mild frustration he used when something wasn't going the way he wanted. I'd heard it 1,000 times. When the Wi-Fi went out. When his coffee order was wrong. When I forgot to pick up his dry cleaning. It was so familiar that my body recognized it before my brain did. My hand freezing on the package I'd been holding, my heart stuttering in my chest. No, I told myself. It's not him. It can't be him. Daniel is dead. You buried him 6 months ago. You threw dirt on his casket. You cried so hard you couldn't stand. But my legs were already moving, carrying me toward the sound like they had a mind of their own. I turned the corner into the lighting section, and there he was. He had his back to me at first, but I knew. I knew the width of his shoulders, the way he stood with his weight shifted slightly to his left leg, the particular shade of brown his hair turned in artificial light. He was wearing a blue polo shirt I'd never seen before and khakis that looked new. He was pointing at something on a high shelf, talking to a sales associate about recessed lighting options. And standing next to him, close enough that their arms were touching, was my sister Lauren. She was 40 years old, 5 years older than me, and she looked different somehow. Her hair was styled in a way I didn't recognize, softer and more feminine. She was wearing a sundress that showed off her figure, something I'd never seen her wear in all our years of family dinners and holiday gatherings. She was looking up at Daniel with an expression I knew intimately because I'd worn it myself for 2 years. Adoration. Complete, unguarded love. Daniel turned slightly, reaching for something, and the light caught his profile. My knees nearly buckled. It was him. Not someone who looked like him, not a grief-induced hallucination, but Daniel James Mercer. The man I'd planned to marry, the man whose closed casket I'd wept over, the man whose grave I still visited every Sunday to leave flowers. And then I saw it. His right wrist, exposed as he reached up toward the shelf. The scar, pale, raised, unmistakable. The exact scar I'd traced with my fingertips on lazy Sunday mornings. The one he said made him feel self-conscious. The one I told him was just another part of him I loved. The package I'd been holding slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a clatter. Neither of them looked my way. They were too absorbed in each other, in their light fixtures, in whatever life they'd built while I was busy mourning a man who wasn't dead. I should have walked up to them. I should have screamed, demanded answers, made a scene that would have brought every employee in the store running. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I stood frozen in the aisle, watching my fiancé and my sister shop together like a couple, and something inside me went very cold and very quiet. Lauren laughed at something Daniel said, that light, girlish laugh I'd never heard from her before, and put her hand on his arm. He smiled down at her, that smile I thought was mine, and I noticed something glinting on his wrist. His watch. The watch I'd given him for our engagement, the one he'd said was the most meaningful gift anyone had ever given him. He was still wearing it. They headed toward the checkout, and my paralysis broke. I followed them, staying far enough back that they wouldn't notice, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. They paid for their purchases, cash I noticed, not a credit card, and walked out into the October sunshine holding hands. I made it to my car on autopilot, fumbling my keys twice before getting the door open. Their silver Lexus, Lauren's car, was pulling out of the parking lot, heading east. I started my engine and followed. I don't remember much of the drive. I remember staying 2 or 3 cars back, just like they do in movies. I remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I remember the October sun glaring through my windshield, making my eyes water. Or maybe that was something else. The drive took about 30 minutes, winding through suburban streets I didn't recognize until we crossed into Henderson. They pulled into the driveway of a beige ranch house with white trim, the kind of house you'd see in 1,000 neighborhoods across America. Unremarkable, anonymous. The perfect place to hide. I drove past, circled the block, and parked 4 houses down where I could see the front door. Daniel got out of the car, stretched like a man who was home, and started unloading bags from the trunk. Lauren joined him, and they walked toward the front door together. I watched through my windshield, barely breathing, waiting for something I couldn't name. The front door opened before they reached it. A little girl ran out, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with dark hair and pigtails, and a smile that lit up her whole face. She ran straight to Daniel with her arms outstretched, shouting words that drifted through my cracked window and shattered what was left of my world. "Daddy!" She called him Daddy. "You're home!" Daniel caught her in his arms and swung her around, laughing, while Lauren ruffled the girl's hair with easy affection. They went inside together, all 3 of them, and the door closed behind them. A perfect little family. My dead fiancé had a daughter, and my sister was playing house with both of them. I sat in my car until the sun went down, watching the house, watching the lights come on one by one, watching silhouettes move past windows. I took pictures with my phone. I wrote down the license plate number. I documented everything I could see because the accountant in me knew that evidence was everything, and because I needed something to focus on besides the scream building in my chest. At 11:43, the last light in the house went off. I started my car and drove home through the empty Nevada streets, my mind churning with a single question that would keep me awake until dawn. If Daniel wasn't in that casket I buried, who was? Daddy! She called him Daddy. The word echoed in my skull like a gunshot, reverberating through every assumption I'd ever made about my life, my family, my future. I sat in my car 4 houses down from that beige ranch house in Henderson, my hands still gripping the steering wheel, and tried to make sense of what I'd just witnessed. The little girl had Daniel's eyes. I'd seen it even from a distance. That particular shade of brown that I used to tell him reminded me of honey in sunlight. She had his smile too, that wide, open grin that made you feel like you were the only person in the world who mattered. She was maybe 6 years old. 6. Which meant Daniel had a child before we ever met. Or the child was Lauren's from some relationship I'd never known about, and Daniel had simply stepped into the father role. Either way, it was a life I knew nothing about. A whole existence running parallel to the one I thought we were building together, hidden behind closed doors and careful lies. I did the math in my head because that's what I do. I'm an accountant. I find patterns in numbers, discrepancies in spreadsheets, the small inconsistencies that reveal larger truths. 6 years old meant the child was born around 2018 or 2019. Daniel and I met in 2022. We got engaged in 2023. He died in April of 2024, except he didn't die at all. The October night had turned cold, and I realized I was shivering even though I hadn't rolled down my windows. I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything with the methodical precision that had made me good at my job. The address, 4847 Desert Willow Lane, Henderson, Nevada. Lauren's license plate, 7B3K91. The second vehicle in the driveway, a black Ford F-150 with different plates. The house itself, single-story, well-maintained lawn, two-car garage, white trim that looked freshly painted. Someone lived here full-time. Someone took pride in this place. Someone had built a home while I was crying myself to sleep in an apartment full of memories of a man who wasn't dead. Through the front window, I could see them moving inside. Daniel in the kitchen, opening the refrigerator with the casual ease of a man who knew exactly where everything was. Lauren setting the table, 4 places, which meant there was someone else I hadn't seen yet. The little girl running between rooms, happy, oblivious, innocent of whatever crimes her parents had committed to build this life. A 4th figure appeared, and my stomach dropped. An older woman with gray hair, moving slowly but steadily, settling into a chair at the dinner table. I recognized her, Patricia Mercer, Daniel's mother, the woman he told me died in a car accident 3 years ago, the same accident that supposedly killed his father. I'd held Daniel while he cried about losing his parents. I'd comforted him on the anniversary of their deaths. I'd even visited their graves with him once, leaving flowers on headstones that must have been props in whatever elaborate production he was running. His mother hugged Lauren warmly, like family, like they'd known each other for years. Lauren said something that made everyone laugh, and I watched through the window as they all sat down to dinner together. A perfect family meal. Grandmother, father, mother, daughter, everything I thought I was going to have someday, stolen and given to my sister instead. I stayed in that car for hours, watching lights turn on and off, watching silhouettes pass by windows, watching the life I never knew existed play out like a television show I couldn't turn off. At 8:30, dinner ended, and the little girl was taken upstairs, probably to bed. At 9:45, Patricia's car pulled out of the driveway, which meant she didn't live there, just visited. At 10:15, the living room light went off, and a light upstairs came on. 2 silhouettes in the window, Daniel and Lauren. I looked away. Some things I didn't need to see. The memories started flooding back then, unstoppable. The night everything changed. 6 months ago, 3:17 in the morning, my phone buzzing on the nightstand, dragging me out of an exhausted sleep. Lauren's voice on the other end, shaking in a way I'd never heard before. "Emily, there's been an accident. It's Daniel." I remembered the way my heart stopped, the way the room tilted, the way I couldn't form words for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. "Is he okay?" I'd asked. "Where is he? What happened?" "I'm at the hospital," Lauren said. "Renown Medical Center. You need to come. But Emily, prepare yourself." The drive to the hospital was a blur of streetlights and terror. I ran through the emergency room doors still in my pajamas, hair wild, face already wet with tears I didn't remember crying. Lauren was waiting in the lobby, her face streaked with mascara, the perfect picture of a devastated sister-in-law. "He didn't make it," she said, pulling me into her arms. "He was gone before the paramedics arrived." "I'm so sorry, Emily, I'm so sorry." I collapsed. I remember that much. My legs just stopped working and I went down, and Lauren caught me, held me, whispered comforting words into my hair while I screamed into her shoulder. She stroked my back and told me everything would be okay, that she would handle everything, that I didn't have to worry about a single thing. "I'll take care of it all," she said. "The arrangements, the paperwork, everything. You just focus on grieving. Let me do this for you." I'd been so grateful, so pathetically, blindly grateful for my responsible older sister who always knew what to do, who always had everything under control. I never questioned why she was at the hospital before me, how she knew about the accident before I did, why the doctors never spoke to me directly. Lauren handled all of it. The death certificate, the funeral home, the insurance paperwork, the closed casket because she said the accident was too severe. You don't want to remember him that way, Emily. Trust me. And I did trust her. I trusted her so completely that I signed every document she put in front of me without reading a single page. She'd give me pills to help me sleep, and I'd take them without asking what they were, and then I'd sign whatever she needed me to sign through a fog of grief and medication. Just standard forms, she'd say, her voice soft and soothing. Insurance paperwork, bank authorizations. Don't worry about the details, I'll handle everything. I handled nothing. I questioned nothing. I was the perfect mark. Too broken to think, too trusting to suspect, too medicated to notice that my sister was dismantling my life one signature at a time. Sitting in that car at midnight, watching the house where my fiancé slept beside my sister, I saw it all so clearly. The pills that kept me foggy, the paperwork I never read, the closed casket I never questioned, the constant presence that I mistook for love but was actually surveillance, Lauren making sure I stayed compliant, stayed blind, stayed exactly where she needed me. The last light in the house went off at 11:47. I stayed another hour, just watching, just thinking, just letting the cold clarity settle into my bones. The woman I'd been 6 months ago, the one who trusted her sister and loved her fiancé and believed that family meant something, she was gone now. Something else was taking her place, something harder, something that wouldn't rest until I understood exactly what had been done to me. I started my car and pulled away from the curb, driving slowly past the house one last time. The mailbox at the end of the driveway caught my headlights, and I saw the name painted on it in neat white letters. Mercer, not Carter, Mercer. Daniel's name, not Lauren's. They were living as husband and wife. 6 months ago, I buried a man who wasn't dead. I signed papers that gave away everything I had. And my sister, the person who held me while I cried, was sleeping in his bed the entire time. That woman died in aisle 7 of a hardware store. The woman driving home at midnight was someone else entirely. Someone who was going to find out exactly how deep this went. And then I was going to take everything back. But first, I needed to answer the question that had been circling my mind for hours, the question that made my stomach turn every time I thought about it. If Daniel wasn't in that casket I buried, who was? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Daniel swinging that little girl in his arms, Lauren setting the table like she'd done it for years, his mother supposedly dead for 3 years, laughing at the dinner table like she'd never been gone. The images played on a loop behind my eyelids, and every time I tried to push them away, they came back sharper, clearer, more painful than before. I got home around 1:30 in the morning. The apartment was dark and cold, the same apartment Daniel and I had shared for 18 months before he died. His things were still in the closet because I couldn't bring myself to donate them. His toothbrush was still in the bathroom holder. His coffee mug, the one that said "World's Okayest Golfer," was still in the cabinet where he'd left it the morning of the accident. I'd been living in a shrine to a man who was alive and well and sleeping with my sister 30 minutes away. I sat at the kitchen table until the sky started turning gray, and then I made coffee and did what I should have done 6 months ago. I pulled out every piece of paper Lauren had given me after the funeral. The box was in the hall closet, a cardboard file box with Daniel's papers written on the side in Lauren's neat handwriting. I'd never opened it after she gave it to me. I couldn't bear to look at anything related to his death, and Lauren had assured me that everything was handled, that I didn't need to worry about any of it. "Trust your big sister," she'd said. "I've got this." I dumped the entire contents onto my kitchen table and started sorting. Death certificate, life insurance policy, bank statements, funeral home invoice, power of attorney forms. A stack of papers representing the administrative aftermath of a death that never happened. My accountant's brain kicked in, and I began organizing everything into categories: financial documents in one pile, legal documents in another, correspondence in a third. The death certificate caught my attention first. Issued by Clark County, Nevada. Cause of death listed as traumatic injuries sustained in motor vehicle accident. Date of death, April 15, 2024. Certifying physician, a Dr. Marcus Webb. I'd never heard that name before. never spoken to any doctor about Daniel's death. Lauren had handled all of it. I noticed something else. The accident location was listed as Highway 95, mile marker 47. But Lauren had told me it happened near the Boulder City exit, which would be around mile marker 23, a small discrepancy, the kind of thing most people would overlook. But I wasn't most people anymore. I photographed the death certificate with my phone and moved on to the life insurance policy. Pacific West Life Insurance, policy value $750,000. I knew about this policy. Daniel and I had taken it out together when we got engaged, both of us naming each other as beneficiaries. He'd joked about it at the time. "Now you'll be rich if I die," he'd said, and I'd told him not to talk like that we were going to grow old together. The beneficiary was listed as Emily Ann Carter. Me. But when I pulled out the claim documents, my hands started shaking. Claim status, paid. Payment date, May 3rd, 18 days after Daniel's death. Payment recipient, account ending in 7734. I didn't have an account ending in 7734. I checked my bank statements, my savings accounts, every financial record I had. Nothing matched. $750,000 had been paid out in my name, and I'd never seen a penny of it. Attached to the claim was a power of attorney form, signed Emily A. Carter. My signature. Except it wasn't. The E was wrong, the upstroke too sharp. The Y didn't loop the way mine always did. I'd been signing my name the same way since I was 12 years old, and I knew my own handwriting better than anyone. This was a forgery. I looked at the notary stamp at the bottom of the page and felt my stomach drop. Lauren M. Carter, Notary Public. My sister had notarized her own forged document. She'd faked my signature on a power of attorney, used it to collect $750,000 in insurance money, and deposited it into an account I couldn't access. The bank statements for my joint account with Daniel told the same story. On April 15th, the day he supposedly died, our balance was $127,000, wedding savings, future house down payment, everything we'd been building together. I traced the withdrawals with my finger, watching our future disappear line by line. April 18th, $15,000 cash withdrawal. April 22nd, $25,000 transferred to an external account. April 29th, another $30,000. May 5th, $50,000 wire transfer. May 12th, the remaining $7,000 withdrawn and the account closed. Total stolen, $127,000. Combined with the insurance payout, that was $877,000. Gone. I called my bank's 24-hour line, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. After verifying my identity, I asked about the withdrawals. The representative confirmed what I already knew. All transactions were authorized by a valid power of attorney signed by you, Ms. Carter. Is there a problem with these transactions? No, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Just reviewing my records. Thank you. I hung up and sat in the gray morning light, remembering, the week after Daniel's funeral, Lauren at my apartment every day, bringing food I couldn't eat, handling phone calls I couldn't answer, being the strong one while I fell apart. She'd sat at this same kitchen table with papers spread out in front of her, pushing documents toward me with gentle encouragement. These are just standard forms, sweetie. Insurance paperwork, bank authorizations, I'll handle everything so you don't have to think about it. I remembered signing, but I remembered it through a fog, a haze that made everything soft and distant. The pills. Lauren had given me pills. The doctor prescribed these, she'd said. They'll help you sleep. And I'd taken them without question because she was my sister and she loved me and she was trying to help. I signed whatever she put in front of me. I couldn't see straight. I could barely hold the pen. And Lauren had sat across from me with patient, loving eyes, watching me sign away everything I had. She drugged me. She isolated me. She handed me papers when I was too medicated to read them, and I signed because I trusted her, because I thought she was protecting me, the perfect victim, created and maintained by my own sister. At 9 in the morning, I called Monica Webb. She was my closest friend at work, had been for 8 years, and she was the only person outside my family I could trust right now. Maybe the only person anywhere I could trust. "I need to see you," I said when she answered. "It's important." "Are you okay? You sound strange. Just meet me." "The coffee shop on Virginia Street." 1 hour, she was already there when I arrived, worry etched across her face. I sat down across from her and told her everything. Daniel alive, living with Lauren, the little girl, the house in Henderson, the forged signatures, the stolen money. Monica's face went through shock, then confusion, then something else, something that looked like guilt. "Emily," she said slowly, "I need to tell you something. I should have told you months ago." I waited, my coffee growing cold between my hands. 3 weeks before Daniel died, I saw them together. Daniel and Lauren, at a restaurant in Sparks. "What do you mean together?" Monica looked down at the table. "Not the kind of dinner you have with your fiancé's sister." They were holding hands across the table. Lauren was laughing. Daniel kept leaning close to her, whispering things. "I almost called you that night. But then Daniel died, and I thought, what's the point? Why hurt you with suspicions about a dead man?" "They were together before he died," I said. "Before he faked his death." Monica nodded miserably. "There's something else." That night at the restaurant, Lauren saw me. She looked right at me, Emily. And she smiled, not embarrassed, not worried. Just smiled, like she knew I'd seen and she didn't care, because she knew I'd never believe it. Grief-blind, trust-foolish Emily, who signed whatever her sister asked and never questioned anything. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you," Monica said. "I thought I was protecting you. Everyone keeps saying that, protecting me, while they steal everything I have." Monica reached across the table and took my hand. "What are you going to do?" I thought about the forged signatures, the offshore accounts, the life insurance, the years of lies. I thought about my sister's smile when she knew she'd been caught, the confidence of someone who believed she would never face consequences. "I'm going to find out exactly how much they took," I said. "Then I'm going to take it all back." Monica squeezed my hand. "You need help, professional help. Not a therapist, an investigator." That night, I searched for private investigators in Reno who specialized in fraud cases. One name kept appearing with 5-star reviews. Grace Holloway, former detective, 22 years with Reno Police Department. Her website had a quote at the top. "The truth doesn't hide forever. It just waits for someone brave enough to find it." I sent her an email at midnight. By 8 the next morning, she'd already replied. She wanted to meet. I hadn't visited my mother in 3 weeks. Before Saturday, grief was my excuse. I was too fragile, too broken, too consumed by loss to make the 15-minute drive to Sparks. Now I had a different reason for staying away. I wasn't sure I could look at her without asking what she knew, without demanding to know if she was part of this, without screaming at someone, anyone, about the magnitude of what had been done to me. But I needed answers. Answers only family could provide. And I needed them before my meeting with the private investigator tomorrow morning. The drive to Sparks felt longer than usual. Every familiar street corner weighted with memories I didn't want anymore. My mother Margaret was 67 years old, widowed 2 years ago when my father Richard died of a heart attack in his living room watching Sunday football. She'd been fragile ever since, leaning on Lauren for everything, trusting her oldest daughter to handle the things she couldn't face, just like I had. We were both marks in Lauren's long con, I was starting to realize. The only question was how much my mother knew. I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in, a single-story ranch in a quiet Sparks neighborhood. My father had bought it in 1985, raised both his daughters here, died in the living room while the Broncos were losing by 14 points. The house looked different somehow. New landscaping I didn't recognize, fresh paint on the shutters, a general air of improvement that didn't match my mother's fixed income from Social Security. The front door opened before I reached the porch. My mother stood there in her cardigan and slippers, confusion on her face. Emily. What a surprise. You should have called first. Not I'm so glad to see you. Not I've missed you. A complaint. The realization stung more than it should have. I hugged her at the door, feeling how thin she'd gotten, how fragile her shoulders were beneath my hands. She smelled like lavender, Lauren's signature scent, the one that used to mean comfort and now made my stomach turn. Inside, the house was immaculate, cleaner than my mother could manage on her own. Someone had been helping her, organizing her, controlling her environment. Photos lined the walls, mostly of Lauren. Graduation photos. Her first wedding, the one that ended after 2 years. Professional headshots from some career milestone I'd forgotten. My own photos were there too, but pushed to the corners, older, fewer. A new photo on the mantel caught my attention. Lauren with a little girl I didn't recognize. Dark hair and pigtails, wide smile. The same child I'd watched run into Daniel's arms 2 days ago, calling him Daddy. The photo was displayed prominently, center of the mantel, like it belonged there. My mother had a picture of my dead fiancé's secret daughter in her living room, and she'd never mentioned the child to me, not once. We settled in the living room with tea served in the good china. Small talk about weather and her garden club and the neighbor's new dog. I waited for my opening, then steered the conversation where I needed it to go. How's Lauren doing? I haven't talked to her much lately. My mother's face softened the way it always did when she talked about her favorite daughter. Oh, she's wonderful. So busy with everything. She calls me every single day. Unlike you. The unspoken comparison hung in the air between us. I've been meaning to ask about Dad's estate. I realized I never really understood how everything was divided. Something flickered across my mother's face. Discomfort, quickly masked. Your father left everything to be split equally between you and Lauren. But you know you weren't in any state to handle finances after Daniel's accident. So Lauren's managing my share? She's the executor. It made sense. She's so good with money. Do you know how much the estate was worth? My mother waved her hand dismissively. Oh, I don't understand all those numbers. Lauren handles everything. She set up my accounts, pays my bills. I don't have to worry about a thing. My mind was racing, doing calculations I couldn't stop. My father had worked 40 years at the power company. His pension alone was substantial. He'd owned a rental property in Carson City that sold after his death. He had a life insurance policy I'd witnessed him sign. The numbers weren't hard to estimate. Lauren told me it was about $400,000, my mother said. After taxes and fees, $400,000. My father's life, reduced to a number that didn't come close to reality. The rental property had sold for $380,000. I'd seen the listing before it closed. His life insurance was $500,000. His pension and retirement accounts were worth at least another $300,000. Even the most conservative estimate put the estate well over $1 million. $400,000 was what remained after Lauren took her cut, her real cut, the one she didn't tell anyone about. I gestured casually toward the mantel, keeping my voice light. That's a cute photo. Who's the little girl with Lauren? My mother beamed. That's Olivia, Lauren's stepdaughter. Stepdaughter. I didn't know Lauren was seeing anyone. Oh yes, she's been with Michael for almost 2 years now. Lovely man. A financial consultant. Michael, not Daniel. A different name. An alias for a man who'd been stealing from women under various identities for longer than I wanted to think about. Have I met him? My mother's smile faltered. Well, no. Lauren said it was complicated. He was going through a divorce when they met. Very messy. She wanted to keep things private until it was finalized. 2 years. Lauren had been with Michael for 2 years. That meant they were together before my father even died. Before I ever got engaged to Daniel. The timeline made my head spin. Lauren had been planning something before Dad passed. Maybe before I ever met Daniel at all. That's wonderful for her. I'd love to meet him sometime. My mother patted my hand. I'm sure you will, dear, when you're feeling more stable. The words hit me like a slap. More stable. I kept my voice carefully neutral. Mom, do you think I'm unstable? My mother's face tightened. Sweetheart, you've been through so much. Losing Daniel, the grief. Lauren says you're still struggling. What exactly does Lauren say about me? She set down her teacup with a small clink. She's worried about you. She says you've been paranoid lately, seeing things that aren't there. She mentioned you might need professional help. I went cold. Lauren was already laying groundwork, building a defense before I even made an accusation. If I went to the police tomorrow and said my sister stole everything I had, there would already be a narrative waiting. Poor Emily, lost in grief, imagining conspiracies, making up stories about her dead fiancé being alive. When did Lauren tell you this? Just yesterday. She called to check on me and mentioned she was concerned about you. Yesterday, the day after I saw them at the hardware store. Lauren knew. She'd seen something in my face, maybe, or noticed I was acting differently, or simply had instincts honed by years of deception. While I was sitting in my car documenting license plates, she was on the phone with our mother, painting me as a crazy woman who couldn't be trusted. My sister wasn't just a thief, she was a strategist, a planner, someone who thought 3 moves ahead and never left anything to chance. If I confronted her without proof, without documentation, without an army of professionals behind me, she would destroy my credibility before I could open my mouth. I stood to leave, forcing a smile I didn't feel. Thanks for the tea, Mom. I should get going. My mother walked me to the door. You should call Lauren. She's been so worried. I will. Soon. At the door, she hugged me, brief and perfunctory. Take care of yourself, Emily. And maybe consider talking to someone, a professional. Lauren knows some good therapists. Of course she did. Probably therapists who would report back to her. Probably people she'd already primed with stories about her paranoid, grief-stricken little sister. I drove 2 blocks from my mother's house before I had to pull over. My hands were shaking too hard to hold the steering wheel. The math kept spinning through my head, numbers adding up to a truth I couldn't escape. 877,000 stolen from me directly, insurance and bank accounts. At least 800,000 missing from my father's estate. Total theft. Conservatively estimated $1.67 million, maybe more. This wasn't just about Daniel. This wasn't just about a faked death and a stolen fiancé. Lauren had been running a long con on our entire family for years. My father's estate was probably just one piece of a much larger puzzle. I wasn't the first victim. I was just the one who finally noticed. I pulled out my phone and looked at Grace Holloway's email again. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, her office on Virginia Street. Lauren thought she was the smart one. Lauren thought I'd crumble under grief and never ask questions. She was about to find out how wrong she was. Grace Holloway's office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building on Virginia Street, sandwiched between a bankruptcy attorney and a bail bondsman. The kind of building where people came when their lives had fallen apart and they needed someone to help them pick up the pieces. The elevator was old and slow, giving me too much time to think about what I was doing, what I was about to set in motion. But when the doors opened and I walked down that narrow hallway toward the frosted glass door that read, Holloway Investigations, I didn't hesitate. I'd spent 6 months hesitating. That version of me was dead. The waiting room was small and functional. Worn leather chairs, a water cooler that gurgled in the corner, magazines nobody would ever read. A receptionist who didn't smile looked up from her computer and told me Ms. Holloway would see me now. The inner office was exactly what I'd expected. Filing cabinets lining the walls, caseboards covered with photos and notes, fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly harsh and real. And behind the desk, Grace Holloway herself. She was about 50, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back from a face that had seen things. Sharp brown eyes that swept over me in a single assessing glance, taking in everything and giving nothing away. She stood to shake my hand, her grip firm and businesslike, no warmth but no coldness either. Just professionalism. Ms. Carter, sit down. Tell me everything. So I did. I started at the beginning, at the hardware store. At the moment I heard Daniel's voice and my world cracked open. I laid the folder I'd brought on her desk, photos from Lowe's, pictures of the Henderson house, license plate numbers, bank statements, the forged power of attorney, everything I'd gathered in the past week. Grace flipped through the documents without expression, making notes on a legal pad in handwriting so neat it looked like a font. I told her about the insurance payout, the drained bank account, the visit to my mother, the missing inheritance money. The way Lauren had already started telling people I was unstable, laying the groundwork to discredit anything I might say. Grace listened without interrupting, her pen moving steadily across the page. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. "How much are we talking about?" "Total. At least 1.7 million. Probably more." She whistled softly, the first crack in her professional facade. Then she leaned back in her chair and studied me with those sharp eyes. "Ms. Carter, I need to ask you something directly. Do you want the truth, or do you want comfort? Because in my experience, the truth in cases like this is usually worse than what you're imagining." I didn't hesitate. "I want the truth. All of it." Something shifted in her expression. Respect, maybe. Good. Because I've seen this pattern before. And if I'm right, your sister didn't fall in love with a con man. She hired one. The words landed like a punch. I'd been thinking of Lauren as Daniel's accomplice, his partner in crime, someone who'd been seduced into helping him destroy me. But Grace was suggesting something different, something worse. She pulled out a fresh legal pad and started mapping the case. "Let's break this down. You have 3 potential crimes here. 1, insurance fraud, faking a death and collecting benefits. 2, identity theft and forgery. The power of attorney, your signatures on documents you didn't sign. 3, estate fraud, misappropriation of your father's assets." She tapped her pen on the desk. "The faked death is the most serious. That's federal if they crossed state lines with the money. Wire fraud, potentially. The question isn't whether crimes were committed. The question is how deep this goes and how long it's been going on. What do you mean? Your father died 2 years ago. Your fiancé died 6 months ago, but your sister's been with this Michael for 2 years, according to your mother." Grace drew a timeline on the pad, marking dates with quick, precise strokes. "That means Lauren was planning something before your father even passed. Maybe before you even met Daniel." The implication settled over me like ice water. Lauren had been in a relationship with Daniel, or whatever his real name was, before I ever knew he existed. Before she introduced us at that charity event where we supposedly met by chance. The entire relationship had been orchestrated from the start. I was never his target. I was hers. Grace slid a contract across the desk. "My retainer is $10,000. I bill $200 an hour after that." I didn't flinch. I had savings Lauren didn't know about, a separate account from before Daniel, money I'd kept for emergencies without ever imagining this kind of emergency. "I'll wire it this afternoon. One more thing, if I find evidence of serious crimes, and I will, I'm legally obligated to share that with law enforcement if subpoenaed. I'm counting on it." Grace almost smiled. "Most clients want to keep things quiet, protect the family name. My family name isn't worth protecting anymore. My sister made sure of that." We shook hands, and for the first time since I'd stood frozen in that hardware store aisle, I felt something like hope. I wasn't alone anymore. I had professional help, someone who knew how to find the truth and document it in ways that would hold up in court. Someone who believed me. The next 7 days were the longest of my life. I went to work, pretended everything was normal, smiled at coworkers who told me I seemed better lately, less fragile. Monica checked in every day, her texts a lifeline of support in an ocean of uncertainty. Any news? Not yet, but soon. Lauren's calls went to voicemail. She left messages dripping with concern, her voice sweet as honey and twice as sticky. "Hey, Em, just checking on you. Mom said you visited. Call me back, okay? I'm worried about you." I deleted each one without responding, without letting myself listen to them more than once. I couldn't afford to doubt myself now. I drove past the Henderson house twice during the week, just to confirm it was real, just to see the lights on, the family inside, the life they'd built on the ashes of mine. Both times I stayed only a few minutes, documenting nothing, risking nothing, just watching, just reminding myself why I was doing this. 7 days after our first meeting, my phone rang at 8:15 in the evening. Grace Holloway. "I found him," she said without preamble, "and it's worse than I thought." I sat down on my couch, heart pounding. "Tell me, Daniel Mercer doesn't exist." The identity was created 5 years ago. Social Security number belongs to a baby who died in 1987. Driver's license is a professional forgery. The man you were engaged to, his real name is David Allen Mitchell. Born in Tucson, Arizona, 1986. David Allen Mitchell. The name of a stranger. The name of the man who'd held me, kissed me, asked me to marry him, Grace continued. He has a criminal record. 2 counts of fraud in Arizona in 2015, charges pleaded down, 18 months probation. After that, he dropped off the radar for a while, then resurfaced in California under a different name. He was married to a woman named Jessica Webb. The marriage ended when he disappeared with $200,000 of her savings. Jessica filed a missing persons report, then a fraud complaint. The case went cold. What happened to him? David Mitchell died in a boating accident off the coast of San Diego in 2018, except the body was never recovered. He's faked his death before, at least once that I've found. Probably more. This is what he does, Ms. Carter. He finds vulnerable women, gains their trust, takes everything and disappears. But he didn't disappear this time. He's still here, living with my sister. That's what's different about this case. Usually these guys move on, new city, new identity, new victim. But David stayed, which means either your sister is his partner or she has something he wants. I thought about the inheritance, the insurance money, Lauren's access to everything our family had. She's not his victim. She's his business partner. That's my assessment. And there's more. I traced the insurance payout and the money from your joint account. Most of it moved through a series of shell companies. Standard money laundering. But the final destination was an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. My mouth went dry. Whose name is on the account? Grace paused. Lauren Michelle Carter. Not Daniel, not David. Lauren. My sister's name on an offshore account worth over $1 million. An account that had been receiving deposits for 3 years. Long before Daniel died. Long before I ever suspected anything. She's been doing this for years, I said. Dad's estate, my money, who knows what else. There's one more thing. I found another victim, a woman in Phoenix named Vanessa Torres. David Mitchell was engaged to her in 2016. Same pattern. Engagement, financial entanglement. Then he vanished with her money. Is she willing to talk? I already reached out. She wants to meet you. She said she's been waiting years for someone else to finally see through him. I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of my apartment, processing everything I'd learned. David Mitchell, professional con artist. Multiple victims, faked deaths. And my sister Lauren, not his accomplice but his partner, maybe even his handler. Together, they weren't just thieves. They were a machine built to destroy women who trusted too easily and loved too much. I was going to find out exactly how many people they'd fed into that machine, and then I was going to tear it apart. Nathan Cross looked like a lawyer who'd seen everything and was no longer impressed by any of it. Gray suit, gray hair, gray eyes that swept over the evidence spread across his conference table with the detachment of a surgeon examining an X-ray. His office was on the 12th floor of a downtown Reno high-rise, all glass and mahogany and views of the Truckee River winding through the city below. Grace had recommended him as the best fraud attorney in northern Nevada. Expensive, but worth every penny. A former federal prosecutor who'd spent 15 years putting con artists in prison before switching to private practice. When he finished reviewing the documents, Those gray eyes met mine with something I hadn't expected. Anger. "Ms. Carter," he said, setting down his reading glasses, "in 30 years of practice, I've seen a lot of fraud. This is one of the most sophisticated family-based schemes I've encountered." He stood and moved to a whiteboard mounted on the wall, picking up a marker with practiced ease. "Let's break down what we have and what we need." "Under what we have," he wrote in neat capital letters. "Insurance fraud, faked death, collected $750,000. Forgery, power of attorney with forged signatures. Identity theft, David Mitchell operating as Daniel Mercer. Wire fraud, money transferred across state lines. Estate fraud, misappropriation of Richard Carter's assets. Pattern evidence, Vanessa Torres as prior victim." The list covered half the whiteboard. Seeing it laid out like that, clinical and organized, made the magnitude of what Lauren and David had done feel somehow more real, more prosecutable. Under what we need, Nathan continued writing. Direct evidence of conspiracy between Lauren and David. Proof of intent, not just circumstance. Ideally, an admission or confession. He turned to face me. "The evidence is strong, but circumstantial. A good defense attorney would argue Lauren was also deceived by David. That she's a victim, not a conspirator. She trusted the wrong man. She didn't know the money was stolen. She thought she was protecting her grieving sister." "She's not a victim," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "She's been doing this longer than he has." Nathan nodded. "I believe you. But a jury needs proof. The offshore account helps, but they'll claim she didn't know where the money came from. David deposited it. She just saw her savings growing." Grace leaned forward. "That's why Emily wants a confession." Nathan set down the marker and studied me for a long moment. "A recorded confession would be ideal, but it has to be obtained legally, or it's worthless." He explained Nevada's recording consent laws. One-party consent state, which meant I could legally record any conversation I was part of without the other person's knowledge. The recording would be admissible in court as long as it met certain criteria. No coercion or threats to obtain the confession, no false promises of immunity or deals. It had to be my own conversation, not surveillance of others talking. And the recording quality had to be clear enough to authenticate. If you trap them into confessing through entrapment, Nathan warned, threats, blackmail, promises you can't keep, the confession gets thrown out and you could face charges yourself. I won't threaten them. I just want them to tell the truth." He almost smiled. "In my experience, the truth is what con artists are worst at. They'll lie, deflect, gaslight. You'll need to be prepared for every tactic they might use." Grace pulled out new files from her briefcase. "While you were setting up this meeting, I wasn't idle. The first file contained a report from Dr. Patricia Lehman, a certified forensic document examiner. She'd compared my genuine signatures with those on the power of attorney documents. Her conclusion was unambiguous. The questioned signatures are inconsistent with the known exemplars. These signatures were not written by Emily Carter. Professional opinion, forgery, with a high degree of certainty." The second file made my stomach turn. Grace had traced the body in Daniel's casket through funeral home records and crematorium paperwork. The corpse wasn't Daniel Mercer. It was a John Doe from the San Diego County morgue, an unclaimed body released to a family member 3 days before the funeral. The paperwork had been signed by Daniel Mercer with a San Diego address. "They used an unclaimed body," Nathan said quietly. "That's calculated. That's premeditated." "They planned this down to the corpse," I said. "There's more," Grace added. "The funeral home director remembers Lauren. She paid cash. $8,000. Direct evidence linking my sister to the procurement of a body for a fake funeral. Not circumstantial. Not something a defense attorney could explain away. Lauren had paid to fill a coffin with a stranger so she could bury my fiancé while he was still breathing." Nathan returned to the whiteboard. "Let's design the confrontation." He outlined 3 options. Confront them at the Henderson house, which would catch them off guard, but gave them the ability to refuse to talk and close the door in my face. Lure Lauren to a neutral location, which would make her more likely to talk, but meant David wouldn't be present. Or a family gathering, natural setting with Lauren's guard down, but emotionally complicated with my mother present. I want both of them, I said, Daniel and Lauren together. Then we need to get them in the same place thinking they're safe, Grace said. I thought about Lauren's voicemails, the ones I'd been deleting for weeks. She'd been calling constantly, checking in, making sure I stayed compliant and unaware. She wanted to see me. She wanted to make sure her paranoid little sister hadn't figured anything out. Lauren's been calling me for weeks. She wants to check on me. What if I finally call her back? Nathan's eyebrows rose. Go on. I tell her I'm struggling, that I need my sister, that I want to visit Daniel's grave and get some closure. She'll offer to come with me. She won't be able to resist playing the supportive big sister one more time. Grace nodded slowly. And at the cemetery, you suggest stopping by her place afterward. You want to see her new house. You want to meet Michael. She can't refuse without looking suspicious, I continued. And Daniel will be there. You draw them out by being the grieving sister who needs help, Nathan said, the role they've cast you in from the beginning. Exactly. I'll give them the victim they expect, right up until I'm not. The next week was intensive preparation. Grace provided professional recording equipment, a digital recorder so small it could fit in my bra, 12 hours of battery life, audio quality tested and verified. We did multiple dry runs in her office, checking clarity at various distances, making sure the device was comfortable enough that I'd forget it was there. Nathan coached me on questioning techniques, open-ended questions that invited confession without demanding it. Help me understand how this happened. I just need to know the truth. Can you explain why? Let them fill the silence. Con artists hate silence. They'll talk to fill it, and when they talk, they reveal. He taught me mirroring, repeating their last few words as a question to encourage elaboration. Strategic silence, pausing after they spoke to make them uncomfortable enough to keep talking. Emotional anchoring, referencing shared memories to trigger guilt and loosen defenses. The soft accusation, implying I already knew while inviting them to explain. I think I already know, but I need to hear it from you. Grace warned me about gaslighting. They will try to make you question yourself. They'll deny things you know are true. They'll tell you you're imagining things, that grief has affected your mind, that you need help. Don't let them. I've had 6 months of questioning myself, I told her. I'm done with that. Friday evening, I sat alone in my apartment with my phone in my hand. 23 missed calls from Lauren over the past 3 weeks. 14 voicemails I'd deleted without listening. It was time to spring the trap. I pressed dial. Lauren answered on the second ring. Emily? Oh my God, Emily, are you okay? The concern in her voice sounded so real. The love sounded so genuine. I let my voice tremble, which wasn't hard because the anger made it shake anyway. Lauren, I'm sorry I haven't called back. I've been struggling. I know, sweetie, I know. I've been so worried. I need my sister. I need you. Something shifted in Lauren's voice. Triumph, poorly hidden beneath sympathy. I'm here, Em. I'm always here. What do you need? I want to visit Daniel's grave. Tomorrow. Will you come with me? She didn't hesitate. Of course I will. And maybe I could finally see your new place. Mom talks about it all the time. I feel like I've been so absent from your life. A pause. Brief, calculating, then warmth like honey. That would be wonderful. Michael would love to meet you. I hung up and sat in the silence of my apartment. The trap was set. Tomorrow I would stand at the grave of a man who wasn't dead and pretend to mourn him. I would walk into my sister's house of lies and let her believe she'd won. I would smile at the man who'd stolen 2 years of my life and call him by his fake name. And then, when they were comfortable, when they thought I was still the broken little sister they'd destroyed, I would watch their faces as everything they'd built came crashing down. Lauren wanted the old Emily, the trusting one, the foolish one. Tomorrow she was going to meet someone else entirely. I woke before dawn on the day I would destroy my sister. The sky outside my window was still dark, but I'd barely slept anyway, my mind running through every scenario, every possible response, every way this could go wrong. For 2 weeks I'd been preparing for this moment, rehearsing questions with Nathan, testing recording equipment with Grace, learning to control my face and voice so they wouldn't betray the rage burning beneath my skin. Now the day was here, and I felt strangely calm. Not peaceful. Just empty of everything except purpose. I showered and dressed carefully. Soft gray sweater, dark jeans, comfortable flats. Nothing threatening. Nothing that suggested I was walking into battle. I looked in the mirror and saw a tired woman, fragile around the edges, exactly what Lauren expected to see. Good. Let her see what she wanted. Let her believe she'd won right up until the moment she realized she'd lost everything. The recording device was on my nightstand, smaller than I'd imagined when Grace first showed it to me. I tested it one more time, speaking the date and my name, playing it back to confirm the audio was clear. Then I taped it to my skin beneath my bra, exactly where Grace had taught me, the cold plastic warming quickly against my chest. 12 hours of battery, more than enough for what I needed. I arrived at my mother's house in Sparks at 10 in the morning. Lauren's silver Lexus was already in the driveway, gleaming in the October sun. I sat in my car for a moment, breathing slowly, centering myself. Then I activated the recording and spoke softly. Saturday, October 26th, 10:03 in the morning. Meeting Lauren Carter at Margaret Carter's residence. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her face lighting up in a way it rarely did for me. "Emily, come in. Lauren's in the kitchen." The hug she gave me was brief, distracted. Her attention was already back on her favorite daughter. I walked through the house I'd grown up in, past the photos that barely included me, toward the kitchen where Lauren was waiting. She looked perfect, as always. Hair styled, makeup subtle, wearing a cream-colored blouse that made her look soft and approachable. She set down her coffee cup and crossed the room with her arms open. "Em." She pulled me into a hug that felt like a trap closing. "I'm so glad you called. I've been so worried about you." I made myself soften into her embrace, made my voice small and grateful. "I know. I'm sorry. I just needed time." She pulled back, her eyes searching my face for something. Suspicion, awareness, anything that might suggest the grieving sister had figured out the truth. I gave her nothing but exhaustion and gratitude. Whatever she was looking for, she didn't find it. Her smile widened, and she squeezed my hands. "Let's get going. I thought we could stop for flowers on the way." The drive to Mountain View Cemetery took 15 minutes. Lauren drove, her silver Lexus smooth and quiet, while I sat in the passenger seat recording every word she said. She talked about grief and healing, about how everyone processes loss differently, about how proud she was of me for taking this step. "It takes time, Em. Everyone heals differently. But you're going to be okay. I know you are. I played my part perfectly. I just feel so lost, like I don't know who I am anymore without him." Lauren reached over and squeezed my hand, her eyes soft with false sympathy. "You have me. You'll always have me." The words landed like acid, but I kept my face vulnerable, needy. I squeezed her hand back. "How did you cope after Daniel's accident? You were so strong through everything." A careful pause before she answered. "I focused on you. Taking care of you gave me purpose, but it must have been hard. You were close to Daniel too." Something flickered in her eyes, a warning light that vanished almost before I registered it. He was going to be family. Of course I cared about him. I filed it away. The slight hesitation, the careful phrasing. She'd cared about Daniel all right, just not the way she wanted me to believe. Mountain View Cemetery spread across a gentle hillside, green lawns dotted with headstones, oak trees providing shade for the dead. We parked and walked together through rows of graves until we reached the one I'd paid for. The headstone was simple, gray granite with clean lines. Daniel James Mercer. 1986 to 2024. Beloved. I stared at the stone, knowing the body beneath it wasn't his. Knowing he was alive 30 minutes away, probably eating breakfast, probably laughing at something on television. I let the tears come because they came easily when I thought about what had been done to me, and Lauren wouldn't know the difference between grief and fury. She stood beside me, her arm around my shoulders, playing the supportive sister while I knelt and touched the grass over an empty lie. I miss you every day, I said to the grave, to the performance, to no one. Lauren rubbed my back. It's okay to cry. Let it out. I keep wondering if there was something I missed. Signs he was unhappy. Was he really happy with me? Did he ever say anything to you? She tensed, almost imperceptibly, but I felt it through her arm around my shoulders. What do you mean? I just wonder if he ever talked to you about us, about our relationship. Her voice came too quickly. He adored you, Emily. He told me all the time. When did he tell you that? A beat. Too long, at family dinners, when you weren't in the room. We never had family dinners with Daniel, not once. Lauren had just lied about something so easily disproven that it bordered on careless. Either she was losing her edge, or she was so confident in my blindness that she didn't bother being careful anymore. I wish I could talk to him one more time, I said, just to understand. I know, sweetie, I know. We stood at the grave for another 10 minutes before I made my move. As we walked back to the car, I leaned into her slightly, playing the exhausted sister who needed support. Thank you for coming with me. I couldn't have done this alone. That's what sisters are for. I took a breath. Would it be okay if we went to your place? Mom talks about it so much. I feel like I've been hiding from everything, including your new life. I'd love to see what you've built. Lauren's expression flickered. Just for an instant, something calculating moved behind her eyes. Then warmth flooded back, the concerned sister making room for the proud homeowner. Of course, Michael would love to meet you. He's heard so much about you. Is he home today? He works from home most days, consulting work. I almost laughed. Consulting, that sounds nice. And Mom mentioned you have a stepdaughter? Her smile tightened. Olivia, she's with her mother this weekend. Good. No child present for what was about to happen. I'd love to see your home, Lauren, see what you've built. She started the car. Then let's go. It's about 30 minutes from here. The drive to Henderson felt longer than it should have. Lauren filled the silence with stories about her new life, how she'd met Michael at a financial planning seminar, how he'd been going through a difficult divorce, how they'd just connected over shared experiences. I listened and recorded and said nothing that might alert her that I knew Michael was David, Daniel was a lie built on the bones of women he'd destroyed. We pulled into the driveway at 4847 Desert Willow Lane. The same beige ranch house I'd watched from my car 2 weeks ago. The same white trim, the same manicured lawn, the same life built on my stolen money. Lauren led me up the front path. Michael, we're here. The door opened. And there he was. Daniel, David, whatever name he was using today. He stood in the doorway wearing a polo shirt and khakis, the perfect suburban husband costume, his face arranged in welcoming warmth. Older than when I'd loved him, but unmistakably the same man, the same smile, the same posture, the same scar on his wrist that I'd kissed 1,000 times. You must be Emily. His voice was warm, friendly, utterly false. I've heard so much about you. I extended my hand, forced myself to touch him, to shake the hand that had signed forged documents and taken everything I had. Michael, it's so nice to finally meet you. His grip was firm, confident, the handshake of a man who thought he'd won. Come in, come in. Lauren's told me everything about her amazing little sister. I stepped across the threshold into the house my money had paid for. The recording device hummed silently against my chest, capturing every word. The living room was tasteful, expensive, full of furniture and artwork purchased with stolen funds. family photos on the walls, including a wedding picture I'd never seen. And on his wrist, catching the light, the watch I'd given him for our engagement. "This is beautiful, Lauren. You've really built something special here. We've been blessed. Michael's consulting has been very successful." Daniel sat down beside Lauren on the couch, his arm around her shoulders, the picture of domestic happiness. "So, Emily, Lauren says you've been going through a hard time." I looked at the man who'd proposed to me with a ring bought with another woman's money, at the sister who'd held me while I cried for a death she'd invented. They sat together in a house built on theft and lies, asking about my hard time with all the concern of wolves inquiring about a lamb's health. "I have been struggling," I said, letting my voice tremble. "But I'm starting to feel like I understand things better now, like pieces are finally coming together." Lauren's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in her eyes. Daniel's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her shoulder. The trap was set. The recording was running, and they had no idea that the lamb had learned to bite. The silence after my words lasted only a second, but I felt every fraction of it. Lauren's smile stayed fixed, but her eyes had sharpened. Daniel's hand on her shoulder tightened, a small movement easily missed if you weren't looking for it. I was looking for it. I'd been watching for every tell, every flicker of discomfort, every crack in their carefully constructed facade. And I'd just seen the first one. Lauren recovered first. She'd had more practice at this. "That's wonderful, Em. Clarity is part of healing." Daniel nodded, relaxing his grip on her shoulder, widening his smile. "Grief has a way of making everything confusing. I'm glad you're finding your way through." They were testing me, probing for how much I knew. I gave them nothing but a soft, tired smile. "It's been a long 6 months. But being here, seeing what you've built, it helps." They exchanged a glance, quick, almost imperceptible, a married couple's silent communication. They thought they were safe. They thought I was still the broken little sister they'd destroyed. I let them believe it a little longer. Daniel offered me more water. I declined. I shifted the conversation casually, keeping my voice light. "Michael, Lauren mentioned you're in consulting." "What kind?" "Financial planning, mostly. Helping people protect their assets, plan for retirement." The irony nearly choked me, but I just nodded. "That sounds rewarding." "It is. I like helping people." His smile didn't reach his eyes. It never had, I realized now. I'd just been too in love to notice. I turned to Lauren. "And you've been so busy with Mom's affairs since Dad passed. I don't know how you manage everything." She waved dismissively. "Family takes care of family, you know that." "I do. I just wish I could have helped more with Dad's estate. I feel like I left everything to you." Something flickered in her eyes. "You were grieving, Em. First Dad, then Daniel. You couldn't be expected to handle financial details. How much was the estate again?" "Mom mentioned 400,000, but that seems low for Dad's whole life's work." The temperature in the room dropped. I could feel it, the sudden chill of danger recognized too late. Lauren's smile tightened. "These things are complicated. Taxes, fees, probate costs. 400 was what remained after everything." I nodded slowly. "That makes sense. I guess I just remember Dad talking about his investments. He was always so proud of what he'd built." Dad exaggerated sometimes. "You know how he was." "Did he?" "I remember the rental property in Carson City sold for over 300,000, and his life insurance was 500,000. I was there when he signed the policy." The silence was heavy, dangerous. Daniel shifted on the couch, his easy manner stiffening. Lauren's voice cooled. "Emily, where's this going?" I met her eyes. "I'm just trying to understand. The numbers don't add up." Lauren stood, moving toward the kitchen. "Let me get us some snacks. We can talk about this later." "Lauren." My voice stopped her. It wasn't loud, but something in it made her freeze. "Sit down." She turned, studying me with new eyes. Daniel stood. "I think maybe Emily's tired. It's been an emotional day. We should probably." "Sit down, David." He froze. The name hung in the air between us, filling the room with its weight. Lauren's face went pale. "His name is Michael," she said automatically. "No, it isn't." The masks began to crack. I could see it happening in real time, the careful facades they'd built crumbling under the weight of 3 words. Lauren and David stood frozen, recalculating everything they thought they knew about this conversation, about me. I continued, my voice steady. "His name is David Allen Mitchell, born in Tucson, Arizona, 1986. 2 fraud convictions in Arizona in 2015. Previously engaged to Vanessa Torres in Phoenix. Stole $180,000 from her. Married to Jessica Webb in California. Stole $200,000 and faked his death in a boating accident." David's face went white. Lauren's jaw tightened until I could see the muscles straining. Should I keep going? Lauren recovered first, years of practice steadying her voice. "Emily, I don't know what you think you found, but I found the offshore account, Lauren. In your name. The one that's been receiving deposits for 3 years. $1.4 million. Her composure cracked. "You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You recruited him. You found David, whatever you want to call him, and you pointed him at me. You helped him fake his death. You forged my signature on the power of attorney. You stole $750,000 in insurance money and drained my bank account." I stood, facing them both. "And you used an unclaimed body from San Diego to fill the casket. John Doe, paid for in cash by you, Lauren. $8,000 to the funeral home." David stepped forward, hands raised. "Emily, listen. I'm done listening. Now you're going to talk." Lauren's face changed. The sympathetic sister act dissolved completely, replaced by something cold and hard. Something I'd never seen before but recognized immediately. The real Lauren. The one who'd been hiding behind masks my entire life. "You think you're so righteous, don't you? I think I'm telling the truth. Something you've never tried." She leaned closer, her voice bitter. "I built that scheme for years, years of planning. And you stumbled onto it by accident in a hardware store. Lucky me. You were never supposed to be smart enough to figure it out. You were supposed to cry, take your grief, and eventually move on with whatever scraps were left. Sorry to disappoint." Her eyes narrowed. "Do you know why I picked you? Out of everyone David could have targeted?" I waited, letting her fill the silence. "Because you were easy. You wanted love so badly you'd believe anything. Daniel told you he loved you and you handed over your whole life." The words were designed to wound. I didn't let them. You're right. I was easy. I trusted my sister. I trusted my fiancé. I won't make that mistake again. Lauren laughed, bitter and ugly. "You think this is over? You think you've won? I think you're in an orange jumpsuit in 6 months and I'm rebuilding my life. That feels like winning to me." She slammed her palm against the coffee table. "I will get out of this. And when I do. When you do, you'll be 60 years old and I'll have built a whole new life. One you can't touch." David grabbed Lauren's arm. "Lauren, stop talking. We need a lawyer." "No." Lauren rounded on him, then back to me. "She already knows everything. What's the point of pretending?" She turned to face me fully, her voice cold with years of resentment. "David was supposed to be my retirement plan. Find a target, get close, take the money, move on. He'd done it before. It was supposed to be easy. But I was the target." Her silence confirmed it. "Your own sister. You had the insurance policy, the joint account, the inheritance coming. It made sense." David was panicking now. "Lauren, for God's sake, she needs to know." Lauren's voice rose. "She needs to know that I'm not sorry, that I'd do it again." David turned on her. "You're destroying us. Everything we built. Everything we stole, you mean." They were turning on each other now, exactly as Grace had predicted. The partnership dissolving under pressure, self-preservation overriding loyalty. "She planned everything," David said, his voice desperate. "The body, the paperwork, the insurance. I just did what she told me. You proposed to her. Lauren screamed. You moved in with her. You were going to marry her. Because you told me to. I watched them tear each other apart, recording every word. Then I spoke, cutting through their accusations. I think that's enough. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and sent a single text. One word, prearranged, now. Lauren stopped mid-sentence. What did you just do? Called some friends. The doorbell rang. Then pounding. Police. Open the door. David bolted toward the back of the house. I heard shouts, scuffling, then silence. 2 officers had been waiting there. Grace Holloway walked through the front door behind 4 uniformed officers. Her eyes found mine. Emily, you okay? Never better, Lauren was screaming as they put handcuffs on her. You can't do this, I'm her sister. Emily, please. David went quietly, his face ashen, already calculating his plea deal. I watched them being let out, Lauren still screaming, David silent. Grace stood beside me. The recording? I touched my chest where the device hummed against my skin. Every word. They were placed in separate cars. The neighbors emerged from their houses, drawn by sirens and spectacle. 30 minutes ago, Lauren and David thought they'd gotten away with everything. Now they were in handcuffs, their careful lies recorded and ready to be used against them. Grace's hand settled on my shoulder. I stood in the doorway of the house my money had paid for and watched my sister disappear into a police cruiser. Her screams had turned to sobs. David stared straight ahead, already gone somewhere inside himself. I wasn't shaking, I wasn't crying. I felt nothing but cold, clean clarity. Like stepping out of a burning house and finally breathing fresh air. Let's go, I said. I have a statement to give. The fluorescent lights of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department made everything look slightly unreal. The beige walls, the gray metal desks, the detectives who'd been waiting for us with coffee that had gone cold hours ago. I'd been answering questions for 3 hours, my voice hoarse, my body exhausted, but I kept talking. After 6 months of silence, I had a lot to say. Detective Maria Santos sat across from me, a woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and no tolerance for nonsense. Grace Holloway was beside me, a steadying presence as I walked the detective through everything. The hardware store, the surveillance, the investigation, the forged documents and stolen money, the offshore account and the body in the casket. I handed over the recording device, watched them document the chain of custody, and felt something loosen in my chest. Ms. Carter, Detective Santos said when I finished, this recording is going to be very useful. That was the idea. The detectives exchanged a look. Respect mixed with something else. Most victims don't build a case this solid before coming to us. I had good help, and I was very motivated. Santos outlined the preliminary charges. For Lauren Michelle Carter, insurance fraud, forgery, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, theft by deception, improper disposal of human remains. 6 felonies. For David Allen Mitchell, the same charges plus existing warrants from California and Arizona. Federal charges were likely for both of them, wire fraud across state lines. Your sister is looking at 15 to 25 years if convicted on all counts, Santos said. I absorbed this. My sister. In prison for 2 decades. The woman who'd braided my hair when we were children, who'd held my hand at our father's funeral, who'd stroked my back while I sobbed over a man she knew wasn't dead. 25 years in a cell. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief. Just a hollow space where something used to be. Mr. Mitchell's attorney has already reached out, Santos continued. He wants to cooperate. Grace raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Con men know when the game is over. He's going to give us everything on Lauren in exchange for a reduced sentence. Will it work? Probably, but he's still looking at 8 to 12 years minimum, and the feds want him too. It wasn't perfect justice. David would serve less time than Lauren even though he'd been doing this for years, destroying women across multiple states. But Lauren was the mastermind. Lauren had targeted her own sister. In the calculus of the legal system, that counted for something. It was past midnight when I finally left the station. Grace offered to drive me home, but I shook my head. I need to tell my mother. Before she hears it somewhere else. Emily, it's after midnight. You're exhausted. She needs to hear it from me. Not from the news, not from a phone call. Grace didn't argue. She understood. The drive to Sparks took 30 minutes through empty streets. 30 minutes to figure out what I was going to say. How do you tell your mother that her favorite daughter is a criminal? That the family she thought she had was built on lies? That she'd been manipulated too, though not entirely innocent because she'd chosen not to see? I didn't have answers. I just had the truth. My mother's porch light was on when I pulled into the driveway. She never slept well, especially since my father died. I knocked and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. She appeared at the door in her robe, confusion creasing her face. Emily, what's wrong? It's the middle of the night. Can I come in? I need to tell you something. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd asked about the estate, where I'd noticed the photo of Olivia on the mantel. My mother's hands trembled as she clutched her tea. Lauren was arrested tonight, I said. So was Michael. Except his name isn't Michael. Her face cycled through emotions. Confusion, denial, fear. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I told her everything, Daniel being alive, the faked death, the insurance fraud, the forged signatures, the offshore account, the other victims, the body in the casket that wasn't Daniel at all. I didn't spare details. I didn't soften blows. She needed to know the full truth, not a gentle version of it. Halfway through, she started crying, shaking her head, whispering no over and over. No, Lauren wouldn't do that. She did, Mom. She confessed. I have it recorded. But why? Why would she do this? My answer was honest because she deserved that much. She wanted money, she wanted control, and she didn't care who she hurt to get it. But you're her sister. That didn't matter to her. I was just a target. We both were. My mother looked up, tears streaming down her face. What do you mean, both? Dad's estate, Mom, $400,000? It should have been over $1 million. Lauren's been stealing from you for years. She crumbled completely then. Years of trust collapsing in a single moment. She'd believed Lauren about everything. The estate, my mental state, the way things needed to be handled. She'd let Lauren control her finances, her bills, her entire life since Dad died. And now she had to face the fact that her favorite daughter had been robbing her blind. After the tears subsided, she spoke, her voice broken. She told me you were unstable, that you were imagining things. I know, I believed her. I believed her over my own daughter. You believed what she wanted you to believe. That's what she does. I should have seen it. All those years, all that money she managed, I never questioned anything. Neither did I. For a long time. She reached for my hand. Can you ever forgive me? I didn't answer immediately because I didn't have an answer. The truth was complicated. My mother had failed me, but she'd also been victimized. She'd chosen to believe Lauren, but Lauren had spent decades building that trust. I don't know, Mom. I want to, but I need time. She nodded, accepting. That's fair. That's more than fair. We sat in silence, the weight of everything settling around us. I'm going to help you recover what Lauren took, I said finally. Dad's money. It's still yours. I don't care about the money anymore. I know. But it's still yours. And Lauren doesn't get to keep what she stole. Monday morning found me in Nathan Cross's office, 3 days after the arrest. He'd been busy. Emergency motions filed, assets frozen, civil suits initiated. The Henderson house was locked down pending forfeiture. Lauren's Cayman Islands account, $1.4 million, was frozen. Her domestic accounts, another $200,000, untouchable. David had almost nothing in his own name because he'd let Lauren hold the money. Smart in some ways, disastrous in others. The criminal case will take months, Nathan said, maybe a year, but the civil case can move faster. What about the insurance money? Pacific West Life is cooperating. They want their money back too. They're treating the policy payout as fraudulent, which means it's recoverable. And Dad's estate? Nathan leaned back in his chair. That's more complicated. We'll need forensic accountants to trace what Lauren took over the years. But if the money went to her offshore account, we can get it. Do it. Get it all. He nodded and continued. David Mitchell has agreed to full cooperation with federal prosecutors. What's he giving them? Everything. Lauren's role in planning the scheme, names of contacts who helped with the fake documents, the funeral home connection, even other potential victims they targeted before you. My blood went cold. Other victims? Nathan nodded. Apparently you weren't the first person they considered. There were 2 other women Lauren introduced to David over the past 3 years. Both backed out before getting engaged. Cold feet. You were the one who stuck. I was option C or D in my sister's scheme, not even special enough to be her first choice of victim. What does David get in return? 8 years federal, eligible for parole in 5. Better than the 20 he was facing. And Lauren? Nathan's smile was grim. Lauren gets nothing. David's testimony buries her. I walked out of Nathan's office into the October sunshine, my phone buzzing with messages I'd been ignoring for days. Reporters had found my number. Old friends had heard rumors. Monica had texted 17 times. The world was catching up to what had happened in that Henderson living room, but I wasn't ready to talk to any of them yet. There was still one more thing I had to do. Lauren had requested a visitor. She wanted to see me. Against every instinct, against Grace's advice and Nathan's warnings, I was going to go. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed to look my sister in the eye one more time. Not as her victim, not as her mark, as the woman who'd torn her entire world apart. She wanted to see the little sister she'd destroyed. I wanted her to see who I'd become instead. The Clark County Detention Center smelled like industrial cleaner and despair. I'd been warned not to come. Grace called it feeding the wolf. Nathan said I had nothing to gain and everything to lose. But I needed to see her. Not for closure, not for answers. I needed Lauren to see what she'd created when she tried to destroy me. I needed her to understand that the broken little sister she'd dismissed was the one who'd dismantled everything she'd built. Security screening took 20 minutes. ID checked, belongings stored, metal detector, pat down. The visitor's room was exactly what I'd expected from television. Rows of plexiglass partitions with phones on both sides, harsh fluorescent lighting, the constant murmur of desperate conversations. I took my assigned seat and waited, watching other visitors around me. Tired women, crying children, men with hollow eyes. This was Lauren's world now. These walls, this glass, these strangers. A door opened on the other side. Lauren appeared in an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. She looked 10 years older than she had a week ago. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup, no carefully chosen outfit. Just the raw reality of a woman who'd lost everything. The guard removed her cuffs and gestured to the seat across from me. Lauren sat down slowly, picked up the phone, and waited for me to do the same. I lifted the receiver but said nothing. "You came," she said. Her voice was raw, hoarse from crying or screaming or both. "You asked." Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we'd never say again. "Emily, I need you to understand. I understand perfectly." "No, you don't." She shook her head, leaning closer to the glass. "David manipulated me too. He said if I didn't help him, he'd—" I cut her off. "Stop." She blinked, thrown off whatever script she'd prepared. "I have the recording, Lauren. I heard you say you're not sorry. That you'd do it again. Don't insult me with lies. Not now." Her composure cracked for just a moment, then she tried another angle. "We're sisters, Emily. Blood. Whatever happened, we can get through this together." I almost laughed. "Together? You stole everything I had. You stole my fiancé, my money, my father's inheritance. You drugged me and forged my signature while I cried on your shoulder. I was desperate. You were greedy. There's a difference." Her face changed then. The sympathetic sister act dissolved, replaced by something cold and hard. The real Lauren, the one who'd been hiding behind masks my entire life. You think you're so righteous, don't you? I think I'm telling the truth. Something you've never tried. She leaned closer to the glass, her eyes burning. I built that scheme for years. Years of planning, years of patience, years of waiting for the right opportunity. And you stumbled onto it by accident in a hardware store. Lucky me, you were never supposed to be smart enough to figure it out. You were supposed to cry, take your grief pills, and eventually move on with whatever scraps were left. Sorry to disappoint. Her eyes narrowed. Do you know why I picked you? Out of everyone David could have targeted? I waited, letting her fill the silence. Because you were easy. You wanted love so badly you'd believe anything. Daniel told you he loved you and you handed over your whole life without a second thought. The words were designed to wound. To make me doubt myself one more time. I didn't let them. You're right, I was easy. I trusted my sister. I trusted my fiancé. I won't make that mistake again. Lauren laughed, bitter and ugly. You think this is over? You think you've won? I will get out of here. And when I do, when you do, you'll be 60 years old and I'll have built a whole new life, one you can't touch. I stood, ready to leave. Her desperation broke through the anger. Emily, wait. I'm sorry, I didn't mean, we can work this out, we're family. I paused at the partition, then picked up the phone one last time. You want to know why I came? She grabbed her receiver. Why? To gloat? No. To show you something. What? The woman you thought you destroyed. The easy little sister you thought would never fight back. I wanted you to see her standing on this side of the glass while you're on that side. I wanted you to know that you failed. Her face crumbled. I wanted you to spend the next 15 years remembering this moment. Knowing that everything you built is gone, everything you stole is coming back to me, and you will never hurt anyone in this family again. I hung up the phone and walked away. Behind me, Lauren was screaming something, her palm slapping against the plexiglass. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The trial began 3 months later, in the coldest January Nevada had seen in a decade. The timing felt appropriate. Everything about those proceedings was cold, clinical, methodical. The prosecution built their case brick by brick, and Lauren's defense crumbled under the weight of evidence she never imagined anyone would find. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Evidence presented included my recording, played for the jury, who gasped audibly at Lauren's confession. Bank records traced the money flow to her offshore account. The forensic document examiner testified that the signatures on the power of attorney were forgeries. The funeral home director identified Lauren as the woman who'd paid cash for the arrangements. Vanessa Torres flew in from Phoenix and testified for 2 hours about how David had destroyed her life 8 years earlier. And David himself took the stand, testifying against the woman he'd partnered with for years. She showed me Emily's financial records, he said, his voice flat with defeated resignation. She said her sister was too trusting for her own good. She laughed when she said it. Lauren's attorney attempted a diminished capacity defense, claiming she'd also been manipulated by David. The jury didn't believe it, neither did the judge. I testified on day 8, walked through everything from the hardware store to the arrest. The prosecutor's final question hung in the courtroom. Ms. Carter, how has this affected your ability to trust? I looked at the jury, then at Lauren sitting at the defense table in her prison jumpsuit. I lost my fiancé, my sister, my relationship with my mother, and 2 years of my life. But I found something else. I found out how strong I am. Deliberations took 7 hours. Grace and Nathan waited with me in the courthouse hallway. Monica had taken time off work to be there. Vanessa had flown back from Phoenix because she'd waited 8 years for this moment and wasn't going to miss it. The jury filed back in just before 5 in the evening. Judge Catherine Marks presided from the bench, her face unreadable. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The foreperson stood, holding the verdict form. Guilty on count 1, insurance fraud. Guilty on count 2, forgery. Guilty on count 3, identity theft. Guilty on count 4, conspiracy to commit fraud. Guilty on count 5, theft by deception. Guilty on count 6, improper disposal of human remains, 6 counts, 6 guilty verdicts. Lauren sat motionless as each word landed, her face draining of color with every pronouncement. I felt nothing but quiet relief. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Marks reviewed the pre-sentencing reports and victim impact statements. The prosecutor read mine aloud. For 6 months, I grieved a man who was alive. I trusted a sister who was stealing my future. I signed papers through a fog of pills she gave me, never knowing I was signing away everything I had. Lauren Carter didn't just steal my money. She stole my ability to trust, my relationship with my mother, and 2 years of my life I can never get back. I don't ask for revenge. I ask for justice. I ask that she never be able to do this to anyone again. Lauren was given the opportunity to speak. She stood, looked at me, and said the words I'd expected. I'm sorry for any pain I caused. Flat, rehearsed, unconvincing. Judge Marks was not impressed. Lauren Michelle Carter, she said, her voice hard. I sentence you to 15 years in Nevada State Prison. You will not be eligible for parole for a minimum of 10 years. Lauren swayed. Her attorney steadied her. Additionally, the judge continued, you are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $1.8 million to Emily Carter and associated victims. The bailiff moved forward with handcuffs. Lauren turned to me one last time, her eyes searching for something. Forgiveness. Fear. Regret. I gave her nothing. She was led through the side door toward prison transport. I watched my sister vanish through that door and felt the strangest sensation. Not triumph, not sadness, just quiet. The courtroom buzzed around me. Reporters shouted questions. Grace squeezed my shoulder. Vanessa was crying, 8 years of waiting finally resolved. But I just sat there, staring at that closed door, thinking about the woman who'd walked through it. She wasn't my sister anymore. Maybe she never really was. The sister I thought I had was a fiction, a story I'd told myself, a character as elaborate as any con she'd ever run. The real Lauren, the one who'd laughed while planning my destruction, had finally met the only thing she couldn't manipulate. The truth. Outside the courthouse, the January sun was blinding after weeks of gray. I stood on the steps and breathed the cold air, feeling something shift inside me. The trial was over. The sentence was delivered. Lauren would spend the next decade behind bars. But my story wasn't finished. It was just beginning. 1 year after I watched my sister disappear through that courtroom door, I woke up in a house I'd chosen for myself, in a town where no one knew my story, to a life I'd built from the ashes of the one that burned down. The view from my bedroom window in Sedona was nothing like Nevada. Red rock formations glowing in the morning sun, juniper trees dotting the landscape, a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. I'd come here to heal. I stayed because I'd finally found something I'd lost a long time ago. Myself. My morning routine was simple now. Coffee on the back patio, watching the sunrise paint the rocks in shades of orange and gold. No alarm clock. I woke when my body was ready. The silence here was different from the silence of grief. It was peaceful, chosen, earned. I was 36 now. My birthday had passed quietly with a hike through Cathedral Rock and a phone call from Monica, the woman who'd lived in Reno, who'd trusted blindly, who'd signed whatever her sister asked. She felt like a stranger now. Not because I'd rejected her, but because I'd evolved past her. She was the caterpillar. I was whatever came after. 8 months ago, I started a business. Carter Recovery Consulting. Financial consulting for fraud victims, helping people navigate the legal and emotional aftermath of being betrayed by someone they loved. My clients found me through referrals, through the news coverage of my case, through word of mouth in support groups I'd started attending. I knew what it felt like to have your trust weaponized against you. I helped people rebuild. Most days I worked from my home office, video calls with clients across the country. My current caseload was 12 active cases, 3 of them pro bono. The pro bono clients were always the ones who reminded me most of myself. Elderly victims. Women who'd lost everything to a husband or a child or a sibling. People who thought they were crazy because everyone told them they were imagining things. Last month I helped a 72-year-old widow recover $300,000 from a nephew who'd been embezzling from her for 5 years. When the money was returned to her account, she cried on the phone. "I thought I was crazy," she said. "Everyone told me I was imagining things. I understood. I always understood. The work didn't erase what happened, but it transformed the pain into purpose. Every client I helped was a small victory against the people who prey on trust. Every recovered dollar was a statement that the con artists don't always win." The civil judgment had awarded me $1.8 million in restitution. Actual recovery to date was $1.2 million. The offshore account had been seized. The Henderson house had been sold. The insurance money had been recovered. The remaining $600,000 was likely uncollectible because Lauren had nothing left. But I'd stopped counting every dollar. The money mattered less than what it represented. What I'd taken back. What I'd rebuilt. What I'd earned through truth. I'd invested $800,000 conservatively, generating about $4,000 a month in passive income. $200,000 sat in savings for emergencies, and $150,000 I'd donated to organizations that help elder fraud victims. Paying forward what I'd learned the hard way. The Sedona house had cost $380,000, paid in cash. 2 bedrooms, a converted garage I used as my office, a small desert garden I was learning to tend. No debt, no obligations, just a space that was mine. My mother called every Sunday at 10 in the morning. We'd rebuilt that much. The conversations were careful, deliberate, but growing warmer month by month. We didn't talk about Lauren. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some wounds needed time that neither of us had. Margaret had sold the house in Sparks. Too many memories, she said. She'd moved to a senior community in Reno where someone else handled the maintenance, and she could play cards with women her own age. I'd helped her set up new financial accounts, ones Lauren couldn't access, managed by a reputable firm that had no connection to anyone in our family. Last Sunday she said something that made me cry. "I failed you, Emily. I let Lauren convince me you were the problem. I'll never forgive myself for that." My response surprised us both. "I'm working on forgiving both of us. It wasn't complete, it wasn't healed, but it was growing. Sometimes that's enough." Vanessa Torres and I talked every week now, sometimes more. 2 women bound by the same predator, now bound by survival instead. She'd started volunteering at a fraud victim advocacy group in Phoenix, channeling her own pain into purpose just like I had. We'd met in person twice this year, once in Phoenix and once when she drove up to Sedona for a long weekend. Over dinner and too much wine, she'd told me something I'd never forget. "You saved my life," she said. "Not literally. But you gave me closure I'd been waiting 8 years for." "We saved each other," I told her. And I meant it. Monica visited every few months, bringing gossip from the real estate firm and dragging me out for margaritas, whether I wanted them or not. On her last visit, she'd looked at me across the restaurant table with something like wonder in her eyes. "You seem happy," she said. Like actually happy. Not pretending. I didn't argue. For once, it was true. Letters arrived from Nevada State Prison every few weeks. Lauren's handwriting on the envelopes. That familiar script I'd known my whole life. The first few I held for days, turning them over in my hands, wondering what she'd written. Apologies, excuses, threats. Eventually I threw them away without opening them. Now they went straight in the trash. I didn't know what Lauren put on paper and I didn't want to know. She'd had her chance to speak. In the living room when she'd confessed. At the trial when she'd said her empty apology. Through the plexiglass when she'd screamed as I walked away. I'd heard everything I needed to hear. The letters were Lauren's problem now. Not mine. 14 years left on her sentence. 14 years of letters I'd never read. That wasn't cruelty. It was self-protection. There's a difference. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings when the sun dropped behind the red rocks and the first stars appeared, I thought about who I used to be. The woman who got engaged and trusted blindly and believed that love would protect her from harm. The woman who'd signed papers through a fog of pills and grief, never questioning the sister who held the pen. She felt like someone from another lifetime. People ask me if I regret what I did, exposing Lauren, sending her to prison, breaking apart what was left of my family. I don't. Not for a second. Because silence wasn't protecting anyone. It was just protecting lies. I learned that the hard way. I learned that loving someone doesn't mean trusting them blindly. I learned that family isn't blood, it's behavior. It's how people treat you, not what they call you. And I learned that it's never too late to demand what you deserve. Never too late to choose yourself. Never too late to begin again. If you're listening to this story, maybe something in it sounds familiar. Maybe you have a sister who always handles everything, a partner who controls the money, a family member who makes you feel crazy for asking questions. Maybe you've been ignoring a feeling in your gut that something isn't right. I ignored that feeling for 2 years. It cost me everything I had. But here's what I want you to know. It's never too late. It's never too late to ask the questions, to demand answers, to protect yourself. It's never too late to take everything back, because the only thing more powerful than betrayal is the truth. And the truth will always win if you're brave enough to find it. That's my story. The true story of how I lost everything to the people I loved most, and how I took it all back. If this story resonated with you, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it. A friend, a sister, a mother. Someone who might be living their own version of this nightmare. Leave a comment below and tell me your story. I read every single one. Your experience matters. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. We're survivors, we're strong, and together we're unstoppable. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing me. And remember, it's never too late to begin again. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 36 years old, and I'm finally free. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.